Hello, everybody. My name is Boaz Avraham Katz. I am a Hebrew instructor here at Elon, and I would like to welcome you to our program today. We're going to hear some readings. We're going to hear some music. We're going to hear some expressions or journals or entries of journals that our students have taken when they were on their recent Holocaust journey during this winter term. So we're going to start immediately by reading, and Sydney, you'll start us off, and everybody just by order read your piece. Please light a candle. You won't light a candle?
Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me? Should I lower it? No? Does that sound okay? Okay. What was the Holocaust? The Holocaust was the planned, systematic attempts by the Nazis and their active supporters to annihilate every Jewish man, woman, and child in the world. Largely unopposed by the free world, it resulted in the murder of 6 million Jews. This calculated campaign of the destruction of Jewish life began in January 1933 in Europe and continued without respite for nearly 12 years. Mass annihilation is not unique to the history of the century. The Nazis, however, stand alone in their utilization of state power and modern science and technology to destroy people. While other people were swept into the Third Reich's net of death, the Nazis, with cold calculation, focused on destroying Jews, not because they were a political or economic threat, but simply because they were Jews. In nearly every country the Nazis occupied during the war, Jews were rounded up, isolated from the native population, brutally forced into detention camps, and ultimately deported to labor and death camps. Jews everywhere in Europe were unconditionally targeted, and all were to share the same fate. An estimated 65 to 70% of all Jews in Europe, including virtually all German and Eastern European Jews, were killed. In addition to the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who were murdered, at least 5 million non-Jews were victims of the Nazi regime. These victims included Poles, Slavs, Serbs, Czechs, Gypsies, Greeks, Italians, Russians, Spaniards, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, and physically and mentally handicapped people.
Today, we light 6 candles in memory of the 6 million Jewish people killed in the Holocaust and the 5 million other victims of the Nazi regime. We light candles in the memory of all the men, young and old, who perished in the camps, the elderly and infirm who were immediately sent to death, the young and healthy who were worked to their deaths, to all those who were executed. We light candles in memory of all the women, young and old, who perished in the camps, mothers who witnessed the deaths of their children, women who risked all to bring new life into the death camps, mothers who had to choose the life of one child over another or their life over their child's. We light candles in memories of the children, of the lives of young lives sniffed out before they had a chance to live, dreams never fully dreamt, let alone realized, childhoods cut short. We light candles in honor and memory of those who survived, who lived through the nightmare and began life anew. Those who had the strength to reopen their wounds, to share stories and with later generations, and those for whom the memory was too painful to bear. We light candles in honor and memory of those righteous Gentiles who risked their lives to save Jewish lives, who hid neighbor or stranger, who brought them food, who tended their wounds. We light candles to honor those who brought the only light to a gloomy world, who brought hope when all was dark.
Elie Wiesel, survivor of Auschwitz, stated, "We will accomplish a mission that the victims have assigned to us, to collect memories and tears, fragments of fire and sorrow, tales of despair and defiance, and names, above all, names." What we all have in common is an obsession not to betray the dead we left behind or who left us behind. They were killed once, they must not be killed again through forgetfulness.
The Holocaust was not simply a throwback to medieval torture or archaic barbarism, but a thoroughly modern expression of bureaucratic organizations, industrial management, scientific achievement, and technological sophistication. The entire apparatus of the German bureaucracy was marshaled in the service of the extermination process.
The following were found scratched on the walls of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, where Jews hid from Nazis who would take their lives. I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. I believe in love, even when I don't feel it. I believe in God, even when he is silent.
The Reverend Martin Niemeyer, a pastor in a German confession church, spent 7 years in the concentration camp. He wrote the following words: "First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me."
The following words come from the book Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl. We who lived in the concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts confronting others, giving away their last pieces of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of his freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one way to die.
On April 12, 1945, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces Europe, wrote the following words in a letter to George Marshall, his Chief of Staff, describing his first visit to one of the camps liberated by US forces. "The things I saw beggar description. The visual evidence and the verbal testimony of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality were so overpowering as to leave me a bit sick. In one room, where there were piled up 20 or 30 naked men killed by starvation, George Patton would not even enter. He said he would get sick if he did so. I made the visit deliberately, in order to be in a position to give first-hand evidence of these things, if ever, in the future, that develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda."
I'll invite you to rise for the traditional prayer over the souls of the dead. El male rachamim.
God full of mercy,
Dayan alamot ve'avi yatomim.
defender of widows and father of orphans,
El na tachshe v'titapek l'dam shenishpach kamayim.
be not silent or restrained regarding the blood which was spilt like water.
Hamtze menucha nechona al kanfei hashchina.
Grant proper rest beneath the wings of your presence.
B'malot kidoshim utorim.
In the great heights of the holy and pure,
Kazar arakia marim umazirim.
who like the brilliance of the heavens give light and shine.
V'nishmanotehem shel revavot alafim anashim v'nashim yiladim v'yiladot.
For the souls of multitudes of thousands of men, women, boys, and girls,
שנהרגו ונשחטו ונשרפו ונחנקו ונקברו חיים.
who were killed and slaughtered, and burnt and suffocated, and buried alive,
בארצות אשר נקח בהן יד הצורר הגרמני וגרוריו.
in the lands touched by the hand of the German oppressor and its followers,
כולם קדושים וטהורים.
all of them holy and pure.
בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם.
May the Garden of Eden be their resting place.
לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים.
Therefore, may the Master of Mercy shelter them in the shelter of his wings for eternity.
ויצרור החיים את נשמותיהם.
And bind their souls with the bond of life.
אדוני הוא נחלתם.
God is their inheritance.
ינוחו בשלום על משכבם.
And may they find peaceful repose in their resting place.
ונאמר אמן.
And let us say, Amen.
You may be seated.
This winter semester, some of our students took a very interesting study abroad. They went, it's called the Holocaust Journey, and it takes them to 4 countries, many different cities, camps, memorial sites. And I've asked some of these students to share with you some of their impressions when they were there.
Good morning. My name is Matthew, and I'd like to share a moment I had in Madonic. We finished the tour of the crematorium and ended up back outside. Most of the building is rubble now, but it still turns my stomach the fact that it ever existed at all. There's a light snow that covers the grass, and the grass curves into a ditch. Our tour guide tells us that it is this ditch where the Nazis threw the bodies and burned them. Some of my classmates gasp, others try to look away, stare at something else, but to be honest, my mind is somewhere else. I'm thinking that it's freezing outside. At that moment, 2 shirts, a quarter zip, a sweater, and a large camo coat stand between me and that January wind. I'm not focusing on what my guide is saying. My fingers are pasty white, and I can't control the spasm that's in my leg. I'd like to think that my peers and I share a common question, though we never discussed it out loud in the open. Well, my answer outside in the open is no, I would not have survived the Holocaust. We were outside for less than an hour. I was wearing 6 layers, and I had a moment of panic, not knowing how long I'd be able to stand the cold. The Jews were forced to stand for 5 hours in the morning just for roll call. 1 layer of shirt stood between them and that January wind. And that's assuming they received a shirt that fits. They stood for 5 whole hours listening for their name. Never allowed to leave, never to help a falling friend, and never allowed to hold a blanket around themselves. I took a deep breath that day and whispered to myself that some people survived that. I don't believe in miracles, but I don't know how else to describe that.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I'm going to be talking about what I saw and felt at the Treblinka and Madonic. So, Treblinka was the first memorial site that we visited in Poland. When we first entered Treblinka, there were these stones lined up to mimic the railroad that ran through the camp, and we could see where the platform would have been located. Nothing is left of the extermination camp, but in its place is a memorial to the countries and towns where the victims came. While walking around the site, I could feel that something terrible had happened there, even though I couldn't see the remains of the structures. It was cold and gray, which made that section of the camp feel isolated from the rest of the world. I remember looking up towards the trees in the back and hearing a road close by, and for a moment, all I could think about was how people in the camp could have heard life around them, but almost be in disbelief that it was really there, just out of reach because of all the death that hung in the air. When we walked to the site of the original labor camp, I started to get a bit emotional as it hit me that throughout our time at the camp, we were walking on the same path that some people never walked out on. You could see the empty shell of buildings and imagine the life that used to inhabit them. It was chilling to observe this part of Treblinka because you could walk around the outlines of buildings that once stood tall, which real people built to house those responsible for the darkness and death of Treblinka. Madonic had a very different feel from Treblinka because it was much more intact. Its proximity to the town of Lublin is what shocked me because I was not expecting that at all when we drove up in our bus. This camp had intact gas chambers and crematoria, which made everything that we read about in preparation for our journey suddenly seem so real. I almost felt numb when we saw the blue remains of Zyklon B. At the end of our tour of Madonic, we saw this huge pile of human ashes, and I felt queasy looking at them. I couldn't fathom in my mind that this pile used to be people just like me.
Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm going to talk about my experience at Treblinka. Before coming on this trip, I wasn't sure how I was going to react to the concentration camps or the memorials. Now that we've been to multiple museums, memorials, and camps, I can say that the feeling that seems keep coming up is one of anxiety. As I stand in the places where so many people lost their lives, all I feel is restless. It's as though I'm in their place and I'm feeling a fraction of the fear they had to deal with. When I first walked into Treblinka, I felt an immediate sense of solemnness and eeriness. It was so quiet, dark, and lifeless. Once we began to look at the camp, I immediately became silent. There was a sense of respect for those who lost their lives, as well as an overwhelming somber and heavy feeling. The many rocks representing the towns the victims came from was eye-opening, as they served as a tangible example of the vast numbers of lives lost in their camp. I was especially drawn to the rock in the middle of the memorial that said "Never Again" in multiple languages. I felt it was incredibly powerful. I think that reminded me of why I chose to come on this trip and go through these incredibly difficult experiences. Memorializing the Holocaust not only honors the victims, but also acts as a reminder of the horrors of humanity and the importance of never letting this happen again. While at the camp, I chose to go to a section by myself and spend some time memorializing the victims. I felt that this was my way of paying them respect. The vast stillness that I felt in that moment was really dominant and powerful. As strange as it sounds, I felt that this was a memorial for the victims, not for the public, for the dead, not the living.
Some of you who are here today might have chosen intentionally to join us this morning because you knew that we're inviting the Elon community, everyone, to join us in commemorating those who perished in the Holocaust. Today is Yom Hashoah, the day of remembrance and also heroism. And initially, this day was established in the state of Israel in 1953 as a day to there commemorate those who lost their lives. Today, we're not the only ones here commemorating those, but we're actually part of a much larger community around the world that comes together on this day because even though founded in Israel, this day has become the day, Yom HaShoah, the day of remembrance that we celebrate around the world. Jews, communities come together. Ceremonies like this are part of it, and that is also an invitation to you. There's more to come today here on our campus, and there is more happening around the world. We're inviting you all, after reflecting here with us, and I want to give a special thanks to those of you who have participated and shared very personal memories of your experiences at the places that you visited, which gives us another dimension and understanding, or helps us to aim for understanding of what has happened and helps us also understand the responsibility of commemorating. So we want to invite you to continue with us. We're going to close this ceremony with the Kaddish, and then we're going to move together to the steps in front of the Mosley Center, where we, as a community, are coming together for 4 hours of reading of the names of those who perished. Another tradition that is actually much older and brings those names that Elie Wiesel was talking about back into our memory. Who are those who were taken away from this world much too early for no other reason than being Jewish? Or in other cases, because the Nazis defined them as life unworthy of living. So please join us. We are also continuing. We're coming back here into the McBridal Gathering Space at 2:30 for theatrical readings of the play Ghetto, to think then together about remembrance and resistance and the connection between those two. That will be from 2:30 to 3:30. And what many of you already addressed, and with which we're blessed to conclude this day of remembrance, is the visit of Shelley Wiener and her cousin Rachel Kishnerman to Holocaust survivors who now are living in Greensboro, who accepted our invitation to come to the Elon community and share their experience of surviving and what they witnessed firsthand. That will take place tonight at 6 p.m. at Whitley Auditorium. So feel free to join, feel free to remain here if you want to have another moment of silence. And thank you all for coming, and I'm handing over to Mir for the Kaddish before we move on.
So our last prayer was a traditional Jewish prayer for the souls of the dead, and this is the Kaddish, which is the traditional mourner's prayer for those of us who remember and have loved ones who we've lost. I'll invite you to rise. It's a prayer known as the Kaddish or the Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. It is a special one that was written in memory of the Holocaust that includes some of the names of the camps, which my friend here is going to be reading. Afterwards, as Dr. Sin mentioned, many of us are heading over to Moseley to read the names, and I'll invite you to join us as we walk over, connecting this ceremony with that experience. Yitkadal,
Auschwitz,
V'yitkadash,
Lodz,
Shemei Rabbah,
Ponar,
Ve'alma dibra chirutei,
Babiar,
V'yamlich malchutei,
Medinet,
V'chayechon uvyomechon,
Birkenau,
U'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael,
Kovno,
Ba'agala u'bizman kariv,
Janowska,
V'imru Amen. Yehe Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam U'lalmei Amaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach.
Theresienstadt,
V'yitpa'ar V'yitzromam.
Buchenwald,
V'yitnaseh. V'yithadar.
Treblinka,
V'yitaleh V'yitalal.
Vilna,
Shmei D'Kurasha.
Bergen-Belsen,
Barichu. Le'elah
Mauthausen,
Min Kol Birchata B'shirata.
Dachau,
Tush B'chata V'nechamata.
Minsk,
Da'amiran Be'alma.
Warsaw,
V'imru Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya. V'chayim Aleinu Be'al Yisrael. V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav. Hu Ya'aseh Shalom. Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. V'imru Amen.